OPR scores. We've won this 7 times since 2012. So we're going to talk about our approach is a little bit different as to how we look at it, doing it. It's one approach, as they'll tell you, and we'll tell you through the process. We are open to any kind of questions afterwards, and you can email us on using our website, and we'll get back to you. And with that, I'll let Susan start.
Okay. I guess I'll just take this out. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Susan, and I'm here with the Platypi. We're actually we're FRC team out of Greensboro, North Carolina. I don't know where I'm standing. That's cool. Try just. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, so we are an FRC team out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Okay.
We don't want to break your ear.
Yeah. Just pass. Yeah. Sounds good. And we're an FRC team out of Greensboro, North Carolina for the 5th time. And we're really excited to be here. Like Mike said, we've done a lot of work with our business plan and entrepreneurship submission. And we really enjoy working on it. And so we just wanted to share what we have with you guys. Like Mike said, again, this is not the end-all, be-all. Of course, we're going to talk about every team is different. So make sure to critique it however you want and make it available for you. One last final time we're going to announce this. The slides are on our website, and which is up here, and if at the end you don't get that, we have business cards up here in front as well. And you can find all the slides that we use up there ready to go. So hopefully this microphone will work a little bit better and it won't be such a hassle. Okay, there we go. All right, so the business plan. Anybody excited to be here? Maybe. Woo! That's more of a response than I really expected. So why do we do a business plan? First gives an award for it, right? You've got your entrepreneurship award, and anyone, did your coach force you to be here? Did they tell you you've got to go to a conference and you pick the first one on the list? I'm really glad none of you said yes. Probably some of you were thinking it. That's okay. Thanks for not raising your hand. I mean, I know my first couple of years I'd check in the kit parts, maybe hope that there was something about business plan in there hidden deep inside that first didn't want us to find. That didn't turn out to be true, so we were left to fend for ourselves. But no, seriously, so why do we do a business plan? Does anybody know, kind of right off the top of your head? Maybe you've submitted the entrepreneurship before, worked on it with your team. All right, well, hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to answer that a little bit better. So let's talk about some practical things first before we answer that question. So how many of you guys had to dig kind of deep into your pockets to come to championship this year? Maybe even a regional or a district event? Yeah, I did too. It wasn't fun. We try and prepare for those things, so we'll talk about that coming up. And would any of you guys start building your robot without a plan? I mean, I know it happens sometimes, but it's not ideal.
And you still made it.
Yeah, you guys are here, so congratulations. But anyone, I mean, starting without a plan, it's a little shaky. So why would you start your season without a plan? And for that matter, start thinking, when does your season start? Does it start 2 weeks after your maybe hopefully break after championship, or do you kick back off in November? And how does that define what kind of team you are? And the business plan can serve as a great way to organize your team and start setting these goals. You can start identifying when do we meet, what our top priorities are, and how are we going to share this with others in our community, because that's what's really important. And of course, I know all of you guys are here to figure out how to get the money, so we'll cover that as well. And the plan for us, in our experience over these past, 6 years now that we've been working on this award, it's helped us with outreach, training, fundraising, student recruitment, sponsors, and it's served as a marketing piece, of course.
There's some seats over here. You don't want to stand the whole time. All right. So some things to consider when you do your business plan. I mean, who's your audience? I mean, we're going to first makes a big point about real world experience. So in the real world, if you're going out trying to raise money, like say you want to, you want to do that killer app, or you've got this great idea, you're going to go to a bank and the bank's going to ask you, what are you going to use the money for? In doing your business plan for First, you have that same kind of concept. What do I need the funds for? Or what's my plan for my season? And, why is there a need for this? That's the other thing to consider. When you're trying to write any section of your plan, okay, who's my audience? What am I trying to reach? Why and how does the plan help meet that need? So let's say, I want $5,000 to start a team. Why do I need to start a team? What's the gap in my community? What's those students learning how to build a robot going to help? And that's sort of what you need to keep in mind. The other thing is, what are the future plans for your team? So as far as a team, let's just think about some simple math. Okay, I've got 15 students on the team, and I want to go for chairmans. Okay. If all 15 students, all they do is build the robot and nobody knows how to write, nobody knows how to do a website, nobody knows how to do video, you've got a gap there. So you've got something you can sort of plan to. And we'll talk about that as we go through things this afternoon. And then you also look at goals in setting a plan, like any other plan. When you do the plan to build your robot, you do those big Gantt charts some of your program managing mentors kind of put out there as to what do I have to do each week in order to get the robot at the end of 6 weeks. You have goals you set, and the business plan is no different. You're going to have a goal. You've got your short-term goals. Maybe your short-term goal is, I need to raise enough money to come to Worlds this year. And then you have your midterm goal. Maybe I want to go for the entrepreneurship award. I want to go for other kinds of awards. I want to increase my presence. I mean, if you look at the whole reason why we have First is basically to complete the first mission, to inspire people to go into technology fields. So how are you going to accomplish that? You can set goals to do that. Maybe my midterm goal is, we did no outreach events this year. I want to do 5. Your long-term goal would be, I want to do 10 or 15, or I want to interact with underserved communities, things like that. And that's the kind of thing that you look at when you're trying to put your plan together. And the other thing you look at is the plan that can help you. If you go through the plan, the thing that the plan that can help you do is try to fill those gaps too. Because if your plan, let's say you're going to do, my plan is to do 10 demos next year. How am I going to do that if I don't have a bot to do the demos? If I don't have a plan to do the demos? It's just like, again, going back to the analogy of building your robot. If I'm trying to build my bot and I know I need 5 sim motors, what do I do first? Well, I go look and see, in the kit of parts or whatever I've got for the last few seasons. There's some seats over there, guys. From the last few seasons, do I have those sim motors? If I don't have them, then what do I do next? I go see if I can get them from Andy Mark. If I can't get them from Andy Mark, then do I have other resources? Or how long does it take me to get them from Andy Mark? Again, same kind of thing. It's not that hard to do. It just takes somebody to sit down and think about it. And we'll talk about ways to help you get in that mindset as we go through the program.
Okay. So, like we said, sorry, you can't see me, I'm a little short. Like we said, this is going to be as easy as pie. So, that being said, how many of you have baked before or really cooked ever? Okay, good. So you guys should be experts at baking and cooking, right?
Hopefully.
Okay, well, you will be after this, and so will your business plan. So when you're cooking and you're baking, you have to start with a recipe. And your recipe usually has the list of ingredients that you're going to use to make your pie. And when we're talking about our pie, we're going to be talking about our business plan. So if I use that analogy, hopefully I don't confuse you and you think we're actually making pie.
I wish.
So First has, over the years, expanded their business plan resources, and they actually have a fundraising. Sorry. Okay, is this better? Can you hear me okay? All right. So First has a fundraising toolkit on their website that's actually available for teams to use, and it just gives you an overview of what a business plan should sort of have or look like. So definitely check that out. But that being said, just like all pies aren't the same, your business plans aren't going to be the same. So as Mike mentioned earlier, we're not here to tell you exactly what to put in your business plan, just more so how you should structure it and things to think about when you're making it. For example, if you're making an apple pie, you're making a cherry pie, they have different flavors, just like all of your teams. All of your teams are different flavors, just like your shirts are different colors. And so you really want to be expressing your flavor of your team within your business plan. That's what you're going to be presenting to your sponsors. A lot of times people want to copy and paste your business plan because it is available on the first website, because we're here, that type of thing, and that's the easy route. But we really urge you not to copy and paste because your recipe should be original and should be catered around your team. One thing to think about when starting your business plan, it's very, very important that you plan. The quote that we want to leave you here with is, a failure to plan is a plan to fail. Okay, if you don't plan before you actually do your business plan, there won't be a business plan because you have to plan before you can make it. You can't just start writing things and implementing things without planning first. So think of it as like writing a paper for school. You have to do your outline before you can even start writing your thesis and your body paragraphs and your conclusion.
And to interrupt Persia for a second, in terms of the recipe idea, some teams are robot teams. And that's what they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But even and I mean, basically you don't do a lot of outreach, you focus on the robot, and you have a killer robot every year. Nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean you can't do a business plan, though. Because in that case, your plan is basically, how am I going to get that robot? How am I going to get my mentors? How am I going to, by building the robot, accomplish the first mission? So there's various ways and various, again, recipes or flavors or whatever that you can use to expand what you've decided, what your students have decided they're going to do with their team.
And the reason that we're not giving you just a step-by-step how to make your business plan presentation is because we really want you to make this your own. You should think of this as, you should use first as like a platform to express what your team is doing and what you plan to do. And so a lot of times teams think that a business plan should just look nice, but it can look nice all at once, but it should actually work for your team, right? It should actually be something that's going to be implemented and be able to work for your team. Our team has been trying for the past few years to sit down for the summer with our team and cohesively make goals as a unit that we want to strive towards, whether that be robot or demonstrations, fundraising, anything like that. So that's definitely a good idea to try and get as many of your team members as possible together to actually sit down and make cohesive goals that everyone can pretty much want to work towards. And also taking the time, I know for the mentors in here especially, taking the time with your students to sit down. It makes day-to-day, I know we only have 6 weeks for build season, but it actually structures out your build season. So you're not just showing up every day and building something or showing up and doing it. It actually creates something that you're working towards and a schedule that you can follow for your team. So I'm going to go back to our recipe for our pie. Step 1 is to make a list. So whether you're planning to make an apple pie or have a successful fundraising event or create a strategy to win an FRC competition, you need to start with a list of ideas when you're brainstorming. Okay, so step number 2 is evaluating your resources. So let's say I'm making an apple pie and this is my list of ingredients. After evaluating my resources, can anyone tell me what I'm missing in my ingredients? Take your time. Apples, right? So I'm making an apple pie and I don't have apples. So it's not really an apple pie, right? So this goes back to what we mean when we say like copying and pasting. Your recipe is not going to work if you're just copying and pasting it from online or from other teams. It should be unique to you. And so Mike's going to explain what that really has to do with a business plan.
Okay, so yeah, what does it have to do with the business plan? It's going back to the recipe here. So I mean, just like making a pie. You know, you'd go to your refrigerator, go to your cabinet in your kitchen, see what you've got for resources, and then figure out what I'm missing. And that's what you really should do with your team. And one of the ways that you see a lot of people do this, whether it's with a team or in business, is through a SWOT or SWOT analysis. Basically, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or opportunities and challenges, depending on whether you don't like the word threats. It's a way for you to sit down and think about what I'm missing as a team. And you'll see this if you've submitted the entrepreneurship award, you'll see that little section in the award that asks about that. Now, in our business plan, our written plan, not the plan that we do submission, one of our threats is the zombie apocalypse, right?
It's a little extreme.
A little extreme, but sometimes it could happen. You know, they've got a TV show about it. But again, you can have, that's why Persia said earlier, you can have fun with some of this stuff. It doesn't have to be, this is, you know, do this, and it's got to be set. You can have fun with just like you do any other kind of aspect of your team. So at a minimum, your student leadership, and ideally your whole team, should sit down and talk about what you want to do and how you're going to get there, and do you want to do maybe what your mentors want to do, what you want to do, as opposed to what you as students want to do. It's the analysis itself isn't really that hard. I mean, I know most of you can sit down in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes tell me what's wrong with your team. You know, what's the bad things? What are the good things that you do? And what are the opportunities that you've got to expand what you're already doing? And then you look at sort of threats and challenges. You know, what's the threat? Well, our threat was, and we'll talk about this a little bit earlier, our threat was we had lost our build space this past year. Pretty big threat, but we overcame it. And by planning for those kinds of things, you can figure out how to overcome those things. In our case, we had looked at the opportunities we had with our sponsors, and because of our relationship with our sponsors, we overcame that weakness. But those are the kinds of things that you can plan, and those are long-term kind of things. You know, do I currently have a weakness? Well, maybe I can figure out how, from a long-term plan, to overcome that weakness. One of the things that immediately people think about is, okay, gee, we're great at programming. We don't have anybody who does mechanical. We need to recruit students who are interested in mechanical. Or we need to recruit mentors who are interested in mechanical. How can we do that? Sometimes it's a matter of talking to other teams, how they overcame that weakness. Sometimes it's looking at, okay, gee, we need a mechanical. Maybe there's some mechanical engineering firms in our area. We might go talk to somebody. And we put our business plan together as a presentation piece, which is what we do a lot. Because it's great. Once you do it, and you want to do a grant application, or you want to go to a sponsor, you can cut and paste parts of it and say, this is what we want to do, and it helps explain it. You can leave it as what's called a leave behind piece, so that somebody can share it. We've done that with our local community foundation. And one of my favorite quotes from one of the students in years ago was, she was talking to one of our state legislators about FIRST. And she was involved in the business side of it. And FIRST is one of the few businesses where you've got to replace a quarter of your workforce every year. So if you're a school team or a community-based team, you've got to think, how am I going to do that? And if you look at your strengths, your weaknesses, and if one of your weaknesses, you don't have enough students, then you look at, okay, maybe I'm a school-based team. Maybe I need to go out and actually promote what I'm doing, as opposed to, there's these bunch of nerds who sit in the back of the science building and don't do anything and haven't been able to participate. I mean, look at FIRST as an overall picture. It doesn't, if you look at what you're doing as a business, and we do that, I mean, we've got a budget of like $60,000. That's a small business for a lot of people. Think about that. You can talk about, we run a small business. And when you're a small business, you've got a marketing department, you've got a website, graphic design, filmmaking. You've got all these little things that maybe other students in your school or your community might be interested in doing. And that fills some of those. But that's why you go ahead and do that analysis to see why, you know, where I've got my gaps. Now, the other thing is, let's see, and we've got this, if you haven't looked at it, check out Thunder Down Under, because they do have a good program about that kind of analysis. So I've skipped through some of that. So we're going to start to plan. What does a business do? Anybody know what a business does? Yeah, it makes a product. It does something. I mean, it's a product or a service. it manufactures something, or it provides, your cleaning service or your website service or something like that. So what's our service or product? If we're saying we're running a business, what do? And it's a different way of looking at your team. Because, if what we're supposed to do, if our goal, and you'll see that, if you've done the entrepreneurial award, they're going to ask you, well, what's your team mission or motto or whatever? That's one of the first questions. Well, generally, that's really just basically achieving the first mission. So in your team, in first, who's your product, or what's your product? Anybody? You guys are. You ever thought of yourself as being a product? Yeah, you're the product of the program. If you go through the first program, you come out as a pro, as Dean says. It's the only sport that everybody can turn pro in. So when you go to talk to a sponsor, you go and talk to them about the fact, hey, I learned how to do X. How many students know how to use a mill, or can do CAD, or can operate a $60,000 business after going through the program? And that's something that you can promote. I mean, that's something that's basically, it gives you something that you can talk to a sponsor and say, hey, we can do this. The other thing that you've got as a product, let's say I want to go out and raise some money. And I can go to a local engineering firm and I can say, look, yeah, our team has produced, we've graduated 20 engineers over our 5 years or 10-year program. And they're doing X, Y, and Z. You guys are short on engineers. Wouldn't it be great if you sponsored us, and we'll make sure you'll have more engineers in the community, you'll increase your possible base of potential hires that stays in the community, especially if you're in a smaller community. I mean, we've had kids on our team that basically they've gone through college, and they've become interns in local businesses. Some have been hired by local companies. So you build that connection, and by building that connection, once they're into the program, you get money back. So it's a way to, again, you are sort of the product of your own success, and it's something that you ought to promote. Now, I've got this up here, the SBA template. If you've never done a business plan, it's a quick and dirty business plan. You can go on the SBA website, and it'll take you through the steps of a business plan. If you're really into certificates, everybody gets a participation certificate. They'll give you a little certificate that says you did a business plan after about 30 or 45 minutes. We've had students do it. It's not a bad little thing to do. It gives you an idea what's done in the real world. And again, real world is important because most of the people that you deal with, when you go out to ask for money, they don't have a clue about first. If I walk into a local engineering company or a bank, and by the way, banks are great sources for short cash, $500, something like that. We're going to support our local community team, and they can say that, but they don't know what first is about. But if you can say, look, we do this. Our students become graduates, come back to the community, we give back to the community, we do all these wonderful things. It's a better story than say, hey, give $500 to the football team. And what does that end up with? Here you've got something that you give your money to, and at the end you have people who come back and will hopefully help your community. Let's see, I won't go that far. There we go. Next one.
All right, so this is what you guys actually get to do when you go home and hopefully get excited, share these notes with your friends on your team, and actually write your business plan. So we've looked at a lot of business plans over our years on the team. A lot of the business plan models have about 5 to 15 steps. And we've decided that we're going to try and make it as easy as pie, kind of like Persian mentioned, and we narrowed it down to 9 steps. So this is what we've found to be the easiest and most effective way to communicate all your ideas and get it all out there for your business plan. And just to note, our business plan is separate than our submission for the Entrepreneurship Award. We have a written out business plan that we work through as a team that's working throughout the season. But the Entrepreneurship Award, that's a lot of pulling from what we've already worked on and then putting that in from our business plan and then putting that into the first templates. So, there we go. So, to start off, we're going to talk about real world elements for each of these 9 steps, because I know a lot of you guys hopefully have gone out and Googled if you're interested about how to make a business plan, or you've checked it out on the FIRST website or anything like that, Chief Delphi, or some real world sources. So this is just going to kind of give you kind of the lingo that you're going to see what people are mostly going to be talking about when you're looking on these sites. So, and then we'll tell you how it translates over to your team and to the people on who you're working with every day. So, first you've got kind of your company over. Did I go one too far? No, I guess not. So, you're going to start out first with an executive summary. It's not up here, but basically what it is it's just one simple laid out paragraph about, it's going to be concise, it's going to be short, sort of like a starting off thesis paragraph or something that you'd start with on a school assignment. I know it sounds scary, you're not writing an essay, I promise. You just want to be able to highlight why you guys are uniquely qualified to succeed. I mean, you all got here, so obviously there's something awesome about you, so make sure to talk about that briefly because you'll hit on it later.
And to interrupt a second, one of the things from a real world standpoint, has anybody ever heard of the elevator pitch? Yeah, it's an elevator pitch, basically, and what an elevator pitch is, if you get on the elevator with somebody you want to try to talk to, and you got a minute to talk to them as the elevator goes up, that's how concise it should be.
You want to make sure to hit on your core competencies, which is a fancy word for what you're good at. Talk about your expected returns and your future plans. Short, concise, brief, but gives you the point. Gets people excited too, because I mean, business plans aren't necessarily short all the time, so get them excited to read your business plan. So here we've got the company overview, and this is going to be the longer, brief history of your team. You're going to want to answer questions like how are you organized, what kind of legal entity you are, how long you've been a team, and definitely your past accomplishments. Past accomplishments are awesome because they're a huge indicator of what you can do in the future. Of course, obviously getting here is definitely a past accomplishment, so make sure to write that down. But anything that you've won at the state level, at the regional level, district, wherever you are, make sure to put those in there. You want to make sure to emphasize, this will come up in the next section, but just to preface, make sure you're always emphasizing and that who you're talking to knows what FIRST is. Because if they have no idea what FIRST is, it's going to be irrelevant. So make sure to hit...
BattleBots.
Yeah, it's not BattleBots, I promise. I know that I'm not the only one who's told about 1 million parents that when you're trying to give a demo. So make sure to hit those key milestones, talk about those past accomplishments, and brag on yourselves a little because you guys are cool, you're here. So from a team standpoint, did I go too far?
Too far.
Too far, okay. So from a team standpoint, this is the same ideas are gonna apply. Your company is your team, right? So even if whether or not you are a 501c3, wherever you're at with that, if you've started that process, if not, you can still qualify yourselves as a company because you've got a budget and you've got products like Mike was saying with the students. And so one kind of reference point, make sure to check out FIRST's toolkit for fundraising. I know they have a team overview section and we pulled a lot of that from there. It was super helpful. Definitely check that out. But
And one of the things we do, to interrupt you again, I'm sorry.
You're
One of the
good.
things we do is we have a section, we talk about our students. So we have a section that early on, like our pictures of our senior students for the year, just to show where they are and what school they're going to. That just helps.
Yeah, so
accomplish.
no, you're kidding. So in-depth explanations kind of, and you want to tell your story. This was our 10th year anniversary as a team, and so we really focused on telling our story. What has happened for the past 10 years? How have we grown? What have been our struggles? And how have we overcome them? So you want to get people excited and you want to get people ready to read your plan, whether it's a parent who wants to get their student involved, a sponsor who's hopefully about to hand you some money, or a student who's maybe interested in joining the team. And you want to get people excited, you want to get them involved, and your stories are the way to do that, really. They're interesting and they're exciting, and if you share them, and then while you're laying down some hard statistics, you know, how many people have we graduated, where have we come from, how many districts do we pull, that kind of thing. These are also questions kind of like, why are you involved in FIRST? What hardships have you overcome? And these questions, you're not just going to hear them from sponsors, you're also going to hear them from first judges when they ask you for entrepreneurship, so take note of that. But always share those stories. That's a huge, important piece. Kind of like Mike was saying earlier, especially brag on your students because they're the products. I mean, if we've got Persia over here and she is the greatest thing on our team since sliced bread, you're going to want to brag on her and talk about how she's come through the team and the awesome things she's been able to do, and emphasize those as well because you want to get those personal stories, that team story, and combine that. And a lot of that is the reason that we're not giving you step by step. Okay, guys, we're going to start with the company overview. You're going to write down this first about your team, fill in the blank. You want to be able to get people excited, share your story, and tell what you've been able to do. We've been able to do the same thing with mentors. We've sat down with our mentors and given them questionnaires about why they're involved with FIRST, what gets them excited about mentoring kids, and put that on our website, on our media platforms, and in our business plan. So being able to spread those stories and spread that excitement, that's what we want to do because it's going to yield new members to your team, new sponsors, new students, anything like that. And a lot of times sponsors will often try and connect themselves with other sponsors through you. We found it a little odd, but it seems to have worked. If you have one company over here, Company X is sponsoring you, and Company Y is another great tech firm in your community, and you want to get them involved, start to mention, oh yeah, we're sponsored by a Company X over here, and they're giving us mentors, and they're giving us money, and it's been awesome. We've been able to accomplish so much. Company Y might want to get involved with Company X, and so their Company Y will hopefully support your team and then make you kind of the middleman to their connections to another company. So try and engage the community. You want to build a community around yourself, which is hopefully going to help you succeed in your season.
So, two things to add while Persia goes up. On stories, how many students have you gained on your team or mentors have you gained if you say, well, we started 12 FRC teams and 23 FLL teams and all that other stuff. Those are kind of odd statistics. I mean, they're not stuff that people relate to. But if you say, you know, as Susan said, Persia's the best thing since sliced bread, and we can tell Persia the story, and you tell that to a parent, and they go, gee, I want my student to be like Persia. It's more easily to relate to. And in terms of getting the comment that Susan made about getting other sponsors to join. Has anybody heard the term thought leaders? So the whole concept is if I get the first person and the second person to sort of join the bandwagon, it's easier to get more and more teams. So you pick people, you say, okay, such and such company has joined, and this is why they joined. Don't you want to join us? Don't you want to sponsor us? You can be on our T-shirt and all that other wonderful stuff. But that's sort of why you do that. It makes it easier for you to sell what you're doing.
Okay, so greatest things since sliced bread. Continue this. So the third section we outlined is the industry analysis section, and it has two subsections, which is the market overview and the relevant market size. So the market overview, pretty self-explanatory, the description of the size and characteristics of your market. The relevant market size is basically going to be the number of potential customers that would be purchasing your product. So for example, if I'm a manufacturer, then it'd be the number of potential customers that might be interested in purchasing my product, and also the amount that I would be charging customers, the amount that they'd be willing to buy. So an example of this would be like Apple, for example. They're always thinking ahead. For them to release a new phone every year, they still have to keep people interested in getting a new phone each year. So you can think of it sort of like that. So thinking about it from a team standpoint, you really want to look at your market overview and your relevant market size as you guys being the product, sort of like what Mike mentioned earlier. This is your bragging time. You guys are the product. You really want to think about what your team has to offer. Because when sponsors are coming at you and they're saying, why should we give you this amount of money, you have to concisely be able to say, look, we can do this is what we have to offer you. Just like what we were saying earlier, students, you guys are the product. All of you will go pro, all of you will get a job or an intern, be successful. That doesn't happen for sports, that doesn't happen for SGA, that type of thing. And you're also going to want going to want to look at why a potential sponsor might want to invest into the first program. I know we said it earlier, but it's really, really important that within your business plan, you include a little snippet about what FIRST is and why it's relevant to you being a product. You can brag about yourself being a product. You can say, we won this championships, we won this award, I was a Dean's List finalist. But if they don't know what FIRST is and what it's about, what you're saying isn't really going to be as significant as you know that it is to them. And so, besides just getting the money from a sponsor and that type of thing, as Mike mentioned earlier, one of our sponsors, Team Connectivity, actually saved us this year. So when we first started out with them, we were just doing small demos, several years back. And so now we have several mentors that are on our team from their company, and they were actually able to save us when we were homeless. And so we now use their machine shop. So that shows that besides the money, sponsors can actually continue their relationships with you for the future and provide more than just funding. So to us, that would be your relevant market and your market overview. For our team, in our business plan, we address it in a section called investing in a cultural change. Feel free to address it differently. Some teams address it differently, but you really want to make sure that also with your sponsors, when you're addressing them personally outside of your business plan, that you really cater to the type of sponsor it is. So for example, if you're talking to a businessman that has children, he's obviously going to be aware of sports and all the extracurricular activities that maybe is offered at his child's school, but he might not be aware of FIRST or what Building Robot really is. So really be able to cater to each sponsor personally. This will not only allow them to donate to you once or twice, but continue relationships with them because you never know when they might need you or you might need them down the road.
Customer analysis. So in this section, in looking at customers, in the real world, you have two basic types of analysis. So you have your target customers. This is really who you're trying to market your product to. Again, we're looking at products and services. You look at the demographic data and possible target customers and all that stuff. So we've talked about Apple a couple of times. If I've got my new Apple phone, what customers do I go after? And you could think of that like, I have a new Xbox controller. Who am I going to try to market that to? Am I going to try to market to 65-year-olds who don't play online video games? And then you also look at your customer needs in the real world. I mean, who you're trying to sell to and why? Because you can have the best product in the world, but if the product doesn't meet the customer needs, and I'll give you the example, one of the criticisms of the iPhone. Where do I plug my headphones in? Does that meet the customer need? And why? And we have various aspects of customer need. Do the customers care about the speed, the quality, the location, the reliability, the price? Those are the things you see in the real world. But how does it apply to FIRST? Who's my target customer in FIRST? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah, that's one target customer. I mean, that's your target customer when we talk about the SWOT analysis, saying, okay, I want to recruit people. That's your target to fill that gap. One of your other targets is, okay, how many parents complain about picking you up from the build site at 1 a.m. in the morning? You got to cater to that. That's another target. That's your market. And in order to do that, you got to impress on your market why it's important. Yeah, it's a pain to get up and to drive Billy to Saturday morning and pick him up in the middle of the night and stuff like that. But if you go back in the customer need, what's the customer need? Well, as a parent, my customer need is I want my kid to go to the best college that I can. They can go to. I want them to learn this stuff because it's easier to get into college. And of course, what have we heard in all the videos this year? What does FIRST give? How much? $50 million in scholarships. That's why they say that. That meets that market, that goes to a customer need, the parents. Because you've got to have parent involvement in order to get the kids to come. Otherwise, Nobody's going to drive you to the build site. The other part of your target customer is your sponsors. So if I'm going to an engineering firm to try to get them a sponsor, I'm going to look at that differently because an engineering firm needs new engineers. If I'm going to a bank, I'm going to go that differently. What does a bank want to do? It wants to show community involvement. So if I'm helping underserved communities, or if I'm helping these great FRC team, that's what you look at. And then you look at your resources to meet that. So you look at look at businesses in your community, as I said, who might be your best sponsors. You look at your school and your community to recruit your students. And it's just a way, again, of looking at this whole process to sort of see what might work out best for you. And individually, you can look at this on an individual basis. If I'm going to have my parent drive me to First, I've got to market First as being the greatest thing in the world and all the benefits I'm getting out of it. Sometimes you look at the same things you say to your parent about doing that, you'd want to say to a sponsor. Because, sponsors have kids. They want their little Johnny to be on an FRC team and go to, a great engineering school or whatever, or a business school. I have one daughter who graduated from a business school because basically she learned how to operate a business, learned how to do marketing and web apps from the First team. And that's what she does in the real world now. She works for a company and she's happy with that. And so she developed that skill from working on a team, not engineering. If I was going to a business school, I was going to a business client, or sponsor, I'd say, look, these are the other things we can do. So with that, our next segment, competitive analysis.
All right, so the competitive analysis is broken down into 3 subsections. So basically you've got your direct competitors, your indirect competitors, and your competitive advantages. So direct competitors are companies, from a real world standpoint, are going to be companies that are just like you or just like your company that fill the same need basically the same way. So one example would be the Apple versus Samsung battle of all time. And I'm not going to get into that because I know there's probably a lot of heated debate and argument that could go on in this room about it. But they basically fill the same need, right? You want your cell phone, it's a touch screen, it's got the camera, it's got the apps, etc., etc. Indirect competitors, though, are going to fill the same need but in a different way. So think about it like cable TV versus Netflix, right? There's 2 ways you want to sit down and you want to watch TV. But do you want to sit there and binge watch for 20 episodes? Hopefully not, but if that's how you do it, then go for it. Or you can watch cable where you can have more of a variety and sit down every week that Wednesday night and watch your show and have it come on. So you got that kind of different indirect competition between the 2. And finally, you've got the competitive advantages. And basically, this is just what makes you great, what advantages do you have over other companies or other teams. So from a team standpoint, basically, I've read a lot of the business plans, like I said, and I know Persia and Mike have as well. So we've seen a lot of different ways to attack this. Some teams go out and they look at their community. We've never done this before, but we've seen that they go out and they analyze, like let's say we're from North Carolina. So we'd look at all the teams from North Carolina and say, all right, how do we stack up against these guys? So you're going to kind of look at their strengths, their weaknesses, and talk about that. But and this is fine. This is a great way to approach it if it works for you and for this, if you're in a great state that has a lot of First involvement and the companies know about First. But if you're catering to like a parent or a sponsor or maybe even a student who doesn't really know about First, what is a comparison between your team and the other teams really going to do for them? So instead you want to highlight, and at least what we've found to be effective, is to highlight the advantages of First and highlight the advantages of your team. You don't have to compare yourself necessarily, but if you talk about First, what is First? What are the advantages of First, like Mike talked about? You can go on, everyone can go pro. You can get jobs, it caters to everyone, more than just people who want to be engineers or tech programming or CAD or whatever you want to do. You can do business, film, it's whatever. So you're able to cater to everyone. And you're also able to kind of work around people's needs as well. So being able to emphasize those along with advantages of your team is going to be a huge highlight. In addition, sponsors can often have a limited budget. So they'll say, all right, well, we are giving $1,000 to an after-school program this year. That's it. So how do you compare against the baseball team or the football team, or the debate team? Maybe you meet all year. Maybe you do community work. Maybe how do you have that extra edge over other school-based or after-school programs? Being able to emphasize this about your team and what makes you guys special is super important because it'll help you get that extra money. I mean, I hate to take away from football, but it'll help you get those funds out of football or out of a company. So maybe they can say, wow, we see that first kids go on to get more jobs. They can go pro. They get competitions. They can hands-on experience. So we'll give the money to them maybe over a football team. So make sure to emphasize that in your competitive analysis.
But don't trash the football team.
Yes, do not trash. That's what I was about to say. So when you go out, especially if you do decide to look in your community and analyze yourself against other teams, do not trash anyone. We're a community. We all love each other. Gracious professionalism. So basically, yeah, just you want to always be nice to everyone, and even contributing in your own community. I mean, I know our team, we love to do demonstrations, outreach. It's one of our favorite things. And so being able to incorporate that as well into our business plan and saying, yeah, we work in the community. I mean, we're at this many demos every year. We run this many summer camps. It's not a necessity, but it definitely gives you like an upper edge, over a football team or a basketball team that meet for the season and then they're done. So kind of more reasons that sponsors would want to fund you. So make sure to add those and include those throughout your plan.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about the sixth section. Congratulations, you've made it this far. We're getting to the end, which is the marketing plan. So this marketing plan, we have 4 subsections. The first subsection is products and services. Pretty self-explanatory. Give the details of the products and services that the company has to offer. The second subsection is pricing. So this is where your detailed pricing would be. So in particular, you might want to discuss how a company would discuss how their pricing compares to other companies. The example I like to give for this is like a premium brand versus a low-cost brand. And when I say low-cost brand, I don't mean that there's anything wrong with being a low-cost brand. I'm going to pick on Mike for a second. Mike has a BlackBerry phone, okay, which you all probably haven't seen in a while. But Mike loves his BlackBerry, and compared to a modern-day iPhone or Samsung or different popular phone, believe it or not, that BlackBerry serves all the needs that Mike needs and Mike wants. So he is an avid customer for his BlackBerry, but it might be considered a non-premium brand because it doesn't cost as much as an iPhone or not as many people have it. But to Mike, it is a premium brand. That's just the example of like what I mean when I say that.
Meets the customer need.
Yes, meets the customer need. So the next thing we have is the promotions plans. This should be the details and tactics that a company would use to attract new customers. So this could be maybe the type of advertising that they use, whether it's online or face-to-face. And the type of advertising they would use would definitely be based off of the product. Some products would be better online, others might be better in person. And then the last section is the distribution plan. So this outlines the ways in which customers can buy and acquire whatever products and services that you have to offer. So now I'm going to talk about that from a team standpoint. The first two are a little self-explanatory, so I'm really just going to focus on the promotions plan and the distribution plan. So this basically gives your team the opportunity to lay out everything that you were planning earlier. Remember how we said planning was like the most important piece before you can even do your outline? This is now where you can bring in that list of your resources and implement it into your business plan. So basically, you really want to hit on what are your current future plans. All those questions and brainstorming and things that you plan, this is where you want to implement it. This is also where you can, so for example, if you have plans to run a summer camp for young students in your area, this is where you should talk about that. If you plan to promote STEM education or go after fundraising, this is also where you should mention it. This is basically the part where you talk about the services and products in your community that you will be going after, if that makes sense.
Operations. So in a in a normal real-world business plan, if you're going to go out and raise money to okay. 10 minutes, okay. All right, yep. So if you're going to raise money for, in a normal business plan, if you're going to raise money, you're going to talk about, like, you want to get money from the bank to increase your customer service department. You're going to talk about your customer service department, you know, what operations you do on a daily basis. And then you're also going to talk about your milestones. You know, if I'm in business 10 years, you know, I started out with 5 employees, and I got 20, and now I got 100, and my revenue went up this way, and I've done all these wonderful things. From a real world, from a team standpoint, you're going to tell how your team is run. Again, if you've done the entrepreneurial award, you've got that little section that says, okay, show me how your team is run. And you can download a chart and say, I got a president and all this other stuff. You can talk about your departments or your sub-teams. In our business plan, we have like a section that has, you know, talks about our department. We have a CAD department. We have a mechanical department. We have all these different departments. And we lay that out. And that helps explain what this group of students does. Why do we do that? Because it's not in the entrepreneurial award. It gives us a way to, when we go out to tell a sponsor, we've got it all laid out. You can show, hey, you know, if you go to an engineering company and they got CAD and all this other stuff, and you've got it already laid out what you do, somebody can relate to that. It's a connection point. And it's easier, you know, as Susan talked about earlier, when you tell your story about, you know, what you do, people relate to that. It's engaged. And in fact, this year in the pits, I put up a sign of Captain Picard and engaged, because it's easier when you talk to sponsors, when you talk to judges, if you engage with them and share your stories, that's cool. I mean, they're not doing this because they have nothing else to do on a Saturday or whatever. They're doing this because they like to talk to you guys. Same with the sponsor. And milestones. Milestones, you'll see that in a lot of grant applications. You know, okay, tell me how you're going to use the money, how you're going to measure that. So you need to keep track of your milestones. If you've done 50 demos, if you've done 100 and, like we have 160 demos in the last, like, 5 years or 3 years or whatever, but that's why you do that. Or you had 100% graduation rate, or your students have gone to XYZ schools. You measure that, and you keep track of that. And some of this, if you haven't done it before, it sounds a little bit daunting, but as you build it, it doesn't take a whole lot of time to update it. Once you sort of build the base model, it's like, you know, I'm going to build the West Coast Drive in the off season. Okay, once I've done it, I know how to do it the next year. In the next year, it becomes easier.
Okay, we're going to do a speed round of the 8th section because I know all of you guys are starving and hungry and probably ready to leave. So the 8th section is management. It's like management team and how that relates to your business. You've got 3 sections again. You've got team management, management team gaps, and board members or board of advisors. So for management team members, this is where you're going to brag on your teammates. Again, like I said, tell those stories, make those connections, and show what your students have been able to do. This is particularly important if you have sponsors who have actually fielded students who've graduated college. I know we've had a couple examples of students, like Mike said, who've gone back and interned for companies that actually sponsored us. Make sure to be able to hit on those and to comment on those as well, so that sponsors can see that there is a reward in there for them, hopefully if they're able to sponsor you or to work with you, whether it's providing mentors, space, what have you. Management team gaps. This is also very important because what you want to do is be very specific on what you need. A lot of times sponsors can't give you money. They might have already allocated it somewhere else, or you came too late, or something of that sort. But they're willing to give you mentors, they're willing to give you space, they're willing to give you some of their product. So, or even mentors especially, I'll come back and hit on that. But them being able to provide other things is just as important, and it shouldn't be undervalued. So if they say, we don't have any money, maybe go back. Say, we have a gap. We don't have a programming mentor right now. Do you have someone who could be interested? Here's what our students get out of it. Here's what other teams get out of it, et cetera, et cetera.
And you'll see that a lot of times in some of the grant applications, they ask you about, do you have space? You have, can people from our company volunteer with your team? So that becomes very important. That gives you that electronics, that electrical mentor that you don't have.
And also, finally, talking about board members, make sure this is very clear. A lot of times, this is where sponsors will look to be able to communicate with your team. Make sure to talk about who your board members are and where they come from to explain the background and who's supporting your team. And you want to make sure that it's very clear so that they know, is your board very connected with your team? Maybe they meet twice a year, something not as serious. So make sure to have that all ready to go so that sponsors can communicate with you throughout the season.
Okay. Now another big. Financial planning. And the real world element, you have a revenue model, which is basically how you make your money, how you get your funding, financial highlights, and funding requirements. We'll skip to the team requirements, basically. For us, you look at, your biggest thing is to do a budget. And in the entrepreneurial award thing, they ask you about what your budget is. If you haven't done a budget, if you're just starting this, one of the easiest ways to do this is just do like a checkbook approach. So if you're a team that's been around for a couple of years, just look at what you spent last year, in the last couple of years, you lay it all out, and you say, okay, this is for robot, this goes in this category, this is for travel, this is for my applications, and you figure out what you spent over the last couple of years, and you budget off of that. And you go back to your SWOT analysis, and you say, okay, look, I've been spending X. I have a gap because I've had to go out, and parents have had to go into their pocket for whatever, and then you try to fill that gap. It's not a hard thing to do, but it does take a little bit of time. Sometimes doing what the budget tells you is we're spending too much money on the robot. I don't think you could tell the robot mentor we're ever spending too much money on the robot, but sometimes that happens. So you look at those kinds of things to fill those gaps, and we're kind of speeding up here a little bit. I'm going to let Hershey come up and talk about the last bit, and then I'll finish.
And guys, I
That
know
is
we're
a copy
kinda
of our
speeding-
budget, by
yeah.
the way.
I know we're kind of speeding through this, so we will be around afterward if you have any questions. Sorry about these last couple sections that have gone by a little bit fast.
Okay, so your executive summary is going to be just like your introduction was. It needs to be short, concise, but it needs to be very powerful. This is the last thing in your business plan that people are going to see in your team. That being said, since we were making pie, you can think of it as you finally finish your pie, you take it out of the oven, you put it on this, you slice it up real nice for your sponsor, you serve it to them, and they've taken that first bite and you're like anxiously waiting on them to see what it is. And then you're like, this is good pie because you did your business plan amazing. But something that's really important about your executive summary, you also maybe want to talk about your future plan. So a lot of people think you do your business plan once and you never have to do it again. You should do your business plan every single year. I'm not saying you should do the whole thing over again every single year, but you should update it every single year and have a revision part within your document. Every year that we add things, take things out, we make sure that it's stated this will be before, this will be changed, make it different. And so it's also okay if the first time you submit your business plan is not okay. Definitely ask judges for critique back because they know what they're talking about. They're just going to help you. And so that way next year when you go back and you add things to your business plan and you change things, they can note that and they can see that. If you have a revision section within your business plan, it can be noted, okay, this is what they started, this is what they changed, and this is how they are now. That's pretty much it for your executive summary.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, we are about out of time, aren't we? So that just basically says where the presentation is available, as we said to begin with. It's on our website under resources, under marketing, and there's a whole copy of the slide deck. For those of you who
We've
have
got
any,
cards up front, so if you
Yes.
guys, when you
And
head
we
out.
have our business plan up here if you want to take a look at it. Feel free.
and we're a 501c3. We've been one since 2009. And we've done a presentation in the past about nonprofit status is right for your team. We've helped a lot of teams through that process in many, many states, including bylaws and articles and all that other stuff. So we have a slide deck for that on the website as well. This is a copy of our table of contents for this year's business plan. That's on the website, and you'll see some of the things we talked about, team history, subsystem organization as your organization and so forth, investing in cultural change. And that's the summary, the executive summary and the fundraising toolkit as to what FIRST has out there. And that's it, guys. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you for
listening.
coming. So again, if they don't kick us out, we'll either be in here or hopefully at one of the tables outside. If they do have another presentation coming in, if you have any questions or one-on-one, it can be really anything. We do have cards. Like Mike said, we've got the business plan.
Yes, and we are happy to
help.
answer questions.
Come find us in the pits. We
Yeah.
are in Turing.
Yep, we're happy to answer questions after